Architectural Board of Review for August 7th, 2023. First. All right, so we will, being 3 o'clock, we will open the Architectural Board of Review for August 7th, 2023. First item on the agenda is roll call.
All right. Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson. Here. Board Member Black.
Yes.
Board Member Noon.
Here.
Board Member Whalen.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
All right, very good. Then we will go into public comment of anything that is not on today's agenda.
All right.
Anybody wishing to speak on an item?
No, I'd said, no, that's correct. All right.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Six. I'll start with in-person public comment. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips. If you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. Seeing no one move to speak in person, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we also did not receive any general written correspondence, so I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair Six.
That being the case, we will close general public comment and pursue approval of minutes for the Architectural Board of Review meeting of July 24th. Can we have those up on the board?
Me too. Thank you, Vice Chair Six.
Are we going to read? I don't think we need to read all this. Is there any
I move
comments?
that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, I have a further discussion on my comments on, let's see, the police station. Just some word editing. Yes, It would be nice to bring the sloped ED sills of those windows in the front corner form down to the stone to make them more look like openings rather than a hole punched in the wall. With that, I don't go into punching walls very often, but I think that we have a motion on the floor. Do we approve those changes? Maker motion to approve those changes? And seconder?
Yes.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor?
All right. Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Black.
Yes.
Board Member Noon.
Yes.
Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, moving on to approval of the consent calendar for July 31st.
Thank you, Vice Chair Six. Up on the screen, we had item A, 1734 Gillespie Street. This received project design and final approval with the comments. For project compatibility, their item B, 1422 San Andreas Street, received project design approval with the following comments. Planting should include a variety of trees apart from just palms, some providing a canopy. Specific plants should be included in the key legend for final approval. Increase the plant sizes in terms of gallons or boxes, and study the elevation of the palms against the building in order to prevent palms obstructing the windows. And then the compatibility findings. And lastly, item C, 3055 De La Vina Street, was given project design approval with the following comments. The applicant shall return with a color board that is more definitive, and study the decorative tile design to be more compatible in character with the architectural nature of the building, and then the project compatibility guidelines. And that was it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do I have a maker?
Motion to approve?
Seconder?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
All right. Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Black.
Yes.
Board Member Noon.
Yes.
Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, approval of the consent calendar for August 7th today.
Thank you, Vice Chair Six. Today we just had one item, 6021 Hollister Ave. This was continued 1 week with the following comments. The landscape be further delineated to display a variety of ground covers, size of landing materials, locations, and a screening element at the entry island to soften the view of the parking lot.
All right,
Motion to approve?
yes.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, announcements, requests by applicants for continuous withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals. Nothing?
No announcements, right?
All right.
No announcements from
Nothing
staff.
from the board on any subcommittee reports? I don't think we're active at that point. Great. So with that, all general business being completed, we will move on to the first item, number 1. This is a new item, a concept review at 301 West Cabrillo Boulevard. This is a proposal for a 233 square foot addition to a 941 square foot Santa Barbara landing building and a new outdoor seating area. Proposal also includes removal of the existing 561 square foot floating storage building and the addition of 2 new accessory buildings totaling 818 square feet. This we will not do a appealable decision at this hearing, and the project requires compliance with the project compatibility guidelines. Thank you. If you would introduce yourselves and show us your project.
Certainly.
It's
It's
on.
on. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
We good? Okay. My name is Jerry Rochi. I'm the architect for the project. Sitting to my right is Jamie Diamond. She represents the owners group, Santa Barbara Landing LLC. To my left is Austin Hunt. He's my colleague. So, as Vice Chair Six kind of summarized, what we're doing here is a addition to the existing Santa Barbara Landing building, which is 233 square feet, adding on to about 941 square feet of existing. And then we're doing a couple dock improvements as well. There's 2 accessory buildings down below, and I'll get into the layout of each of those buildings. And then we're doing a little deck extension off the back end of this as part of the improvements here. So really, this building is, or this project is 2 parts. You have the improvements to the main building up here, and then you have 2 new accessory buildings down below on the docks. And I'll just kind of zoom in on a few of these photos so you can kind of see a little bit more. Sorry, not photos, renderings. Okay, so the existing building follows this wall here all the way down around, and what we're doing is we're popping out a little addition along this end, changing the orientation of the entry and some new windows. And then here's 2 new accessory buildings that are being added down below on the docks. And these accessory buildings are going to be replacing some really old, dilapidated accessory buildings that are currently down there. From the dock, here's a rendering showing one of the new accessory buildings, and then this a new opening that's on the south side of the landing building. And then on the east side of the building, we're showing a new concession window and the new openings that we're adding here. And then what we're doing is we're freshening up the exterior materials, the signage, and the roof materials and the canopies as we can to help just freshen up the building. And then another rendering showing the one of the replacement buildings for the accessory buildings down below. This is from the backside. And then kind of a parting shot of the entry of the landing, kind of opening up to the south, looking through at the boats and the ocean beyond. So that's kind of our pretty pictures from there. And then we'll move into a little bit more to the nuts and bolts of this. So here's the existing facility. Come on now. Oh, yeah. All right, I guess I'm going to this tool. So here's the existing roof line of the landing. All of our changes to this facility exist under the existing roof line. So we're not doing any improvements to the roof itself other than changing the material from a shake material to a standing seam metal material. And then here you'll see a little pad that's buried kind of beneath these canoes. We're adding an accessory building down there. And here you'll see the existing accessory buildings, and we're replacing these accessory buildings in a very similar footprint, but we're changing the look and the feel of those buildings. And then on this side over here, we're adding some dock extension or deck extension out here over the land. We felt it was too difficult to go over the water, so we're adding that component as well. And then I'm assuming you guys are familiar with this. Would you like me to gloss over these anymore, or just kind of,
Does anybody need that?
or I can move into the
Maybe
proposed?
on your specific questions, if you have a
Okay,
specific
we can
area.
move in. We'll just keep moving then. You guys know the harbor, so our project is here. And then I've already pretty much walked you through this, but here's the extension of the building, here's the deck extension, the two accessory buildings. Here is the existing building drawing, and so we're just kind of showing what areas of the existing drawing we're modifying and changing. Essentially, it comes down to this wall, the deck area right here, and then these accessory buildings. And then the proposed floor plan for the main building. Oh, there we go. So the way this is going to work is
That's fine, we don't need to necessarily know the interiors.
Okay, very well. So again, doors to the exterior, new seating layouts, some new railings with maybe a little railing top counter kind of area that people can stand, look at the ocean and have a cup of coffee at. This is the window which serves the people walking through from the cruise ships or sightseers, looking through there. And here's the addition. Standing seam metal roof. And then from the elevations. The multi-panel door and the awning over it. Some new signage, refreshing the siding as needed, painting and standing seam metal roof, new lighting, new railings along the edge. Down below, new railings where applicable. On the north side, the new entry. So as you round the building, before the entry was on this elevation, but now you're walking straight in. And then the gangway goes down to the docks down below. And along the walkway, a new concession window opening up, serving beverages and grab-and-go type sandwiches and pastries. And then moving down to the accessory buildings. So the first of the accessory buildings is kind of following the footprint of the existing buildings. We've expanded it slightly, but we'll have 4 doors on this side, another couple doors on this side. There's multiple partners to this business entity, so they each require their own storage, their own usage, and so that's what this helps with. Let's see if we can keep going down here. Getting into the look of these buildings, standing seam metal on the roof and then extending down some of the sides. Wood, some compatibility, trying to be compatible with the wood siding on the door locations and the sides of the building. You can kind of see from the renderings how we're approaching that. And then moving into the final building, it has a similar aesthetic, all kind of taken from parts and pieces of around the harbor, different materials and things which are very compatible, very similar with what's going on at the rest of the harbor, and working the smaller building as well. And then structurally, we've been asked multiple times how we're going to do the deck system. So would you like me to walk through the structure a little bit on this deck?
I don't think so.
So-
We don't need to see that.
We're good.
it's exposed, it's mostly about the underside and how it,
It's about the underside of the deck, yeah. It's suspending it, how we're suspending it, because people were asking that without how you put the case on in the water. So this explains that if you're interested, but,
we don't need to.
okay, very good.
I don't think it's a significant aesthetic issue.
Then that concludes my presentation.
All right. No landscaping?
At this point, none really proposed at this moment. But,
Very good.
We have a few planting pockets next to the building we could specify different
All right.
plant material for.
Thank you. So with that, we will open public comment on this item.
Thank you, Vice Chair Six. I'll start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do have one request to speak, so I'll go ahead and start with Michael Cohen. If you'd like to make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Hello, Commissioners. My name is Michael Cohen. I own Santa Barbara Adventure Company and am one of the kayaking BAP holders in the harbor. I'm here today to fully understand the impacts and the changes our friends at Santa Barbara Landing are proposing. It appears the proposed plan would remove the current Santa Barbara Landing entrance and route clients into the public walkway along West Beach. The drawings show guests lined up on the public sidewalk outside of the south-facing window. And there are many businesses and users on that harbor ramp area, and I'm concerned that the Santa Barbara Landing is planning to permanently use the area as a walk-up window to service their guests. The public walkway should not be monopolized by Sea Landing business use. This area is already impacted heavily by cruise ship users, business activity permit holders, other marine users as well. Additionally, I'm concerned that the current plan does not adequately service the public need for restrooms. With marine usage, it is not uncommon for guests to need to use a restroom before or after going on an excursion or to need a private area to change. 2 restrooms to service the Sea Landing, 6 boat slips, each with a capacity for 30 to 120 guests, plus the public use does not seem adequate. Having gone through this proposed planning process myself, I understand the difficult work you and our friends at Santa Barbara Landing are undertaking, and I'm hopeful that by bringing attention to these concerns early in the process, adequate solutions can be implemented. And I ask you if you have any questions for me.
No, thank you. Just to reiterate or make you know that we are an aesthetic board, and most of the issues that you have listed are functional, and I hope that you can find the correct avenue to work those out and be heard.
Thank you.
Great. At this time, that's all the speaker slips that I have. If you do wish to make a public comment, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. Seeing no one else move to speak, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to comment on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we also did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair Six.
Therefore, we'll close the public hearing part of this and bring it to the board for questions. Who would like to start? Ms. Anderson?
All right, can we go to the site plan, please?
Certainly.
Okay, so the landscape pockets you're talking about are on the north side of this plan.
Yeah,
Right there.
they would be along this edge, along the building here.
And what is currently in those pockets?
Let's go to the photos, and I'll just point those out in the photos. You can kind of see little bits and pieces along here.
Okay.
That's essentially what we're looking at. Jamie, yeah.
Hi, Jamie Diamond. So the city maintains that waterfront / Parks and Rec. It's
Okay.
kind of this wishy-washy area. And so they will plant succulent cuttings and different things in there.
Okay.
We'll go through and weed it every once in a while. But our intent, to keep it up with our aesthetic, we're asking the waterfront and Parks and Rec to work together to have something a little nicer. They've been making a huge effort in the walkway along the wrap on either side of weeding better, but it's, there's, what grows there is what grows there,
Yeah.
for the most
Okay.
part.
And while we're on this photo, what, is this a storage shed that we're looking at?
If I may. The Harbor Works department, the facility restroom maintenance group uses that to store cleaning supplies for the restrooms. And we will have another area for that. Within the building, we'll be able to keep the supplies for them there.
It'll be inside your building?
Yeah,
And so this is the location of the new window,
yes.
the service window?
Correct.
Correct.
If I may add a question to that, the electrical panels and so forth are all going to remain?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the plan at this point.
Okay, thanks.
We also have an extensive electrical project that's happening right now that did not require ABR approval. So that's, running new electrical to the docks and things like that, and upgrading the circuit board that's to the left of this picture that you can't see.
Okay, thanks.
Can we go back to the site plan real quick? And was there an opportunity to place that service window off of one of your decks so that people could come off the public walkway?
We didn't feel like that was going to be the best use of the space, right? Currently, there's lots of people that come down through this area, and it's, I guess, from a public's perspective, it's not very active. There's not a lot there. So the use of this landing, we felt, was better used, having that window there. Did you want to speak to that a little bit better?
Yes, please. We're the only business, there are other users further down the jetty, like the UCSB Sailing Group and Wildlife Animal Rescue Area, as well as the outrigger canoes on the beach side of that walkway. People will be able to come inside and access our service counter. But by doing this, we felt we were actually providing more access to beach users to give them more of an amenity that they can come right off the beach and access and not feel like, oh, well, I'm sandy and wet and can't come in.
Sure.
Also, that will be a way for when cruise ships are present, that whole area gets tented and fenced, and that will allow them to utilize to order a iced coffee while they're waiting or something like that, and it'll be for their own use, so we aren't having to break the secure areas for them.
Okay. And then last question, are you replacing all of the existing windows as well as adding the new ones?
That's the plan, yes.
Okay.
Yes. The walkway that abuts this building is actually fairly wide, too. It's wider than what you're seeing in this picture. So there's ample room for passage as people are standing in line. And
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Whalen?
Thank you, Chair Six. So as I understand it, the larger storage building is already extant, correct? And it's just going to get recited and,
no, it's a brand-new building.
well, there is one there currently,
They're correct.
and it's being expanded slightly, right?
There, yeah. I can-
So
let me
the
just go to those
second
photos.
one, the smaller one, that's not replacing anything, right? That one's new.
That's a new
So
building in a
there's some
place.
program for that.
Correct.
Well, if you could go back to the site plan,
Sure.
there are, this shows it.
Oh, sorry.
If you zoom in, there are a half a dozen temporary sort of Rubbermaid storage cabinets there.
Where,
The current storage area.
you want me to go to the?
Yeah.
Okay.
They also occur on your site plan as 12. Those are all going away.
Correct.
And so the intent of the smaller one is to take up what's in there.
I'm going to let Jamie speak to the operations. She's got it all nailed down.
So these are being removed, and the larger, new accessory building is replacing in this footprint.
Okay.
These are old vinyl sheds that the
Rubbermaid.
previous ownership had put up. And we're trying to create something that looks
Yeah.
a lot more cohesive. It's going to be one building instead of six or seven separate sheds. And it'll be easier to maintain and keep the
So
aesthetic.
is there a program for the smaller, new proposed storage shed? Or is it just going to be decanted from the temporary ones?
Yeah, that kind of goes back to the interior functions of the main building. Since we're opening up the interior functions of the main building, we're losing a couple offices in that space, right?
Thank
So
you.
since we're
That
losing
answers
those
my
offices, we
question.
have to relocate one of those offices down to that smaller. building
Something's
down
got to
below.
give, I figured, right?
Yes, yes.
Those are my questions. Thank you, Chair
All right,
Six.
thank you. Mr. Black?
Minor question. Do you anticipate that any of the existing landscape would be impacted by the construction at all, such that you'd want to refresh the landscape? Make it, I know it's not part,
I'm
it's not like
sure-
a formal part of your proposal here, but
I'm sure it will be impacted. We are in close work with Cesar Barrios, who's the manager, the business manager for the waterfront, and we can talk to him about what that might look like from his perspective, but it's going to be impacted.
I think it'd be good if you come back, when you do come back, for final, that you bring a landscape plan, just to show what's being proposed in those locations.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
Mr. Newton?
Yeah, just a couple quick questions. It looked like you're showing the standing seam you said is going to continue down to the ground on two
On-
sides?
On the accessory building, yes.
On both of
Both
them?
of the accessory buildings.
Okay. What was the thought behind that?
Just looking for an aesthetic that might break up kind of the monotony of a shed roof, something that makes it look a little bit more special.
Okay. And then secondly, the railings. It looks like you're showing maybe a cable railing?
Correct.
Is there precedence for that in the
There is.
area?
There
Okay.
is. Let me skip to some photos where we have that shown here. You have to find that. Here's one right over here.
Okay. And you'll be sort of tying into that and continuing?
The decks, the new railings around the decks will have that railing.
Yep. Okay.
And that railing that you see there is also on the opposite side of the building as well.
Got it. Thank you. That's it.
All right, my questions, we talked about the metal siding. If I understand, could we go to an elevation that shows both roofs of this very small addition and the big addition? Is your intention to continue the slope of one to the other in one line? Is that what you're getting at?
Am I going to the main building or one of the accessory buildings?
The two accessory buildings from the north elevation,
Okay, let me see if I can find
I
it.
think it might be in your renderings.
Yeah, I think probably, oh, there we go. So these slope angles are just low sloped roofs.
Yeah,
They're not necessarily designed to match this roof, but this
I
roof has multiple
understand.
pitches.
Yeah.
So short of actually climbing up there and taking a measurement of this, I think it would probably come very similar to matching this lower slope down here.
okay. Did you explore matching, there's I think there's three different slopes on the existing building. Did you explore matching any of those particular slopes?
I think we probably did, just in the process of trying to design that. I can't say right now whether one is, do you remember, are they matching or are they?
The lowest slope was very similar.
I think the lowest existing is 2 and yours are at 1 and 12. Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, we can definitely raise that up to 2, or we can study that a little bit, but that was
All right.
something
Well,
that,
those are questions. So, comments?
I think that the design aesthetic is appropriate for the location. I think the location of the structures are appropriate for function. And I mean, look forward to some further details, and we didn't go through materials, but I know they're on there and we talked about them, so looking forward to the next round.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wayland?
I would second all of Member Anderson's comments. You may want to consider some rainwater runoff, some gutters and downspouts, but that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Noon?
My only comment would be the standing seam, bringing it down to grade. Obviously, on the water side, not an issue, but my concern would be on the side where there's traffic, it could get beat up and, over time, not probably wear as much as you'd like. I think the wood siding is what's on the rest of the building. Yes. Yeah, and that's going to last be a lot more durable. Just my thoughts. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about it, but just something maybe to consider. So, but I agree with the previous comments that it's appropriate for the location.
Mr. Black?
I would agree, and I would compliment you too, your efforts to maintain sort of design continuity, and I think it's really going to be a nice improvement. It's nice and cleaned up, and I look forward to seeing your final plans.
All right. My own, first of all, I want to appreciate, the effort to clean this up and in all its potpourri of stuff out there. I just think that we're introducing, because of the metal down to the siding, the different roof pitch, the different eaves and so forth, I think we're, still, it just seems to me that introducing and getting away from a unique expression of architecture, these should be very simple and complementary of the larger building to make them more composite unit, throughout. I would, I like different design and so forth, but maybe the humbler, the better. And this larger unit, a larger accessory building is just simply a repeat of a ridge down the middle with the very identical pitches of the main building, and the same with the smaller one. I just think that having this a different expression here goes back to more potpourri of different things on here, and I would like to see it more brought together and very similar to be one total composite form. And I think that if you have the ability, a small item is to address and bring a built-in, build out cabinet around your electrical boxes and so forth on the east wall along the boardwalk there, if that is technically feasible. I think I've seen it done other places. So, those are slightly differing from the rest of the group. So I would would like to hear somebody's motion or opinions. And do we need to discuss that difference, or am I so outside the box that somebody would like to go and make a motion with similar to what was expressed by the majority of the board?
Vice Chair Six, if I understand you correctly, in a broader sense, you're asking for more relationship between the two auxiliary buildings and the main building?
Absolutely.
In terms of their roof lines?
Absolute roof lines and everything.
I could support that, but not a specific solution. They, you know, the roof pitches might point to one another
sure.
or somehow echo the original structure. They don't have to get all fancy with a ridge and a gable and all of that, but I can see his point about them looking like members of the same family.
Am I allowed to comment? Or
Anybody else want to?
I mean, I see your point, Vice Chair Six. And I understand your comment of not wanting it to look like potpourri or whatever you were saying, the different structures down there. But I feel like they do look similar, and I actually could support what they've presented, so I probably would not support a motion for them to change it. That's where I sit.
Can we hear from the other? We have a 2 to 3
I-
feeling here.
I agree with Board Member Anderson. I wouldn't want to put that burden on the applicant to try to match, if you will. I think it's close enough with the color, with the material. My only issue was the maintenance of the metal, but I think it's appropriate and unique for that
So, Mr.
location.
Black, you're the sway vote.
I agree with
All right.
Mr. Noonan's comments.
So do one of the 3 majority members want to articulate a motion?
Sure. I will make a motion for indefinite continuance back to the full board with the following comments. Applicant shall study the roof slope of the accessory structures to be complementary to the main structure. The applicant shall come back with a landscape plan for the pockets along that's the east side? The east side. The applicant shall study the opportunity to enclose the electrical panels along the east side. And that's it.
All right, do I have a seconder?
Second.
All right, under discussion, is it fair to require you, the applicant, to see about the landscape, being that it's a very unique shared responsibility? Is the landscape in your control?
It is something that I can work with the waterfront on
Okay.
pretty easily. They may have parameters for what
Okay,
they want there.
so you're willing to
But
pursue that?
absolutely, yes.
That item on the motion, correct?
Certainly, thank you.
Okay, very good. I think that was it. So we have a motion on the floor. Yes, we did,
I think I did.
Mr. Black. So we have a motion on the floor?
Great. Vice Chair Six?
No.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Vice Chair Six, may you state your reason for the record for no?
That I think the accessory building should more match the main building to have a consistent whole. Okay, I guess we have 5 minutes recess before our next applicant shows. Oh, okay, ready for number 2?
There was no need to take a recess if we don't.
Yep.
No,
Okay.
we're not taking a recess.
5 minutes.
Good afternoon. Say, how you doing?
It's amazing how long that takes.
No corn on the cob.
It's terrible. Cost is the hardest, actually.
Keeping your tongue out of there,
It's
too.
a- it's-
Constantly testing.
It's a good look, though, don't you think? Come on,
Okay,
come on, Richard. Just help me out.
We're being televised, so let's
You're gonna drive this?
get serious.
Eileen Ryan.
All right, so our applicants are here, so we will go to item number 2, 2 South Quarantina Street. This is a proposal for a new two-story, 18,774 square foot corporate office building for Marburg Industries. The project will include 104 parking spaces. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. Project will require compliance with the project compatibility guidelines. So if you would make your presentation,
me.
introduce yourself.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
I need to step down. I have a
Absolutely.
conflict.
Understand.
Brian Cornell.
Jeff Hornbuckle, Cornell Collective.
And
John Kaikano at DMI, Land Use Agent.
so, Marburg, Jeff is going to go through the photos here first. This is at Quinientos and Quarantina. You can see the relationship to the freeway there at the far upper left. This is obviously a very industrial part of town. And Marburg came to us and said, look, we basically need a facility for our admin function, which is all of their customer service as well as all the operations of Marburg. And we need to be able to utilize the majority of this site for parking our employees who are right now parking all over the neighborhood. When they came to us, they said, look, we want this building, and you can thumb through these, Jeff, as we go. They want this building to be a model of sustainability. They want it to be a great working environment for their staff. So that was the program as we took it. And when we put everything together, it required close to 20,000. I think we're 18,000 square feet, something like that. So it's about a 9,000 square foot footprint. And we chose, here's a shot from the freeway, by the way, if you can see it. I mean, it's pretty obscure, but just so you can look at that relationship to the city or to the 101. So we placed the building on that corner of Quinientos and Quarantina, and we placed the parking basically to the south or to the west, I guess we should say. We aligned the parking entrance with the adjoining street. I don't remember what the name of that is. And we also made a pedestrian connection all the way from the building to where, basically the trucks are now all staged and parked over here. So we don't have a landscape plan or landscape architect yet, but obviously we've tried to create a nice rhythm of planters for tree canopy in this area. Parking lot will include trash. The intent here is that customers will come in and park in that corner where Jeff is pointing and come in a main entrance. We chose not to put the entrance in the corner, which would be the logical thing in normal downtown circumstances, but it just makes sense to orient this to the parking lot. And then the building basically is 2 stories. We are proposing this to be a mass timber building, so we will use cross-laminated timbers for the floors and roof, and laminated beams for all of the vertical structure. And so I think the next shot we're going to go into is, so you can get a kind of a sense here of their program. We're having a central bathroom core at the ground floor. It's important to have an outdoor space for employees, and then that's adjacent to basically what is the employee lounge space. There's also a training room off of that where all the drivers come in the morning and get their instructions for the day. There's extra bathrooms and showers for that function. And then basically, it's all those functions of Marburg, which are extensive, whether this is roll-off bins or temporary fencing or customers for all of their services. And then the upstairs is mostly admin space, accounting, HR, et cetera, and just a large open office. So we want as much light as possible into these offices, and that's kind of then the sustainability direction, and that was where we took off from. So this is not a Spanish building, I will tell you. We've covered the roof with solar panels facing due south, with a small little area for mechanical directly over the bathroom core below. And I think the next shot is then this is the entrance rendering, where you can see we're basically proposing a very, very simple building with as much glass as possible and intervening walls that would be plaster with kind of a natural finish. We're not sure what the color is, but we want it to be as natural as possible. This is that view from that employee walkway that I mentioned that goes straight into that outdoor lounge space that then connects to the staff lounge inside, and then that training that I told you is off to the left. So that's a little blow up of that, and then of course our second stair, our exit stair, comes down into that, which will make for a convenient connection between the first and second floor. Another shot of that area, which we think is, we're proposing to cover that so that the roof is very simple and rational. Still, there'll be lots of sun that comes into that space, but it'll be covered for protection as well. This is the actual corner at the street intersections. So that's just a symmetrical glass relationship. The planting will be very important here. I don't know what the street tree is, but we're imagining what that might be. The fascia edge, I should mention, is really just a continuous gutter that we will bring downspouts down into the ground for stormwater. And we really just want that fascia gutter to essentially be as one element. So we're imagining a very thin gutter that'll be the depth of the cross-laminated timber construction at the roof. And then this is at the Quinientos adjacent driveway, which we're not proposing chain link fence, it's there now. And then just to give you a sense of what the beautiful thing about the CLT is that it's able to express itself inside the space. And so we think as a working environment, the glass, lots of natural light, and this wood expression is going to just make for a great working environment for the employees. And then that's in that staff lounge looking out to that little patio. So we have elevations if we want to look at them. The building is basically 25 feet to the roof plane. The solar panels and that mechanical area would extend above that. I think it reaches up to like 29 feet, something like that. And again, we need to, the next time we come back, I think landscaping is going to be very, very important, but we wanted to get this concept to you to see what you thought. I think that's it. Anything else, Jeff? Brian Borgatello, by the way, from Marburg is here in the audience, and Derek.
All right. Is that complete your presentation then?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We'll open public comment.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair Six. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, but if you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. Seeing no one move to speak, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. I do see one hand raised on Zoom right now for Michael Holliday, so I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Brief public comment about the proposed new Marburg corporate headquarters project. Many of us have been working down in the Craftsman District for over 30 years now, and we are currently connecting and organizing the businesses and nonprofits in our area to make some changes and improvements to the aesthetics, safety, cleanliness, and to address the lingering post-COVID homeless population in our area. While some in our district are completely opposed to the planning and use issues associated with Marburg. In this particular area, I want to address my specific comments to the planning, design, and aesthetics of the proposal before you today. Marburg has been a great community member, and they've been really supportive of our area, and we look forward to continuing, that relationship into the future. Assuming that Marburg addresses the planning issues and the CEQA issues associated with the use of the site for their ongoing industrial use, we would like to see, many of us in the Craftsman District, that this proposed project address the visual and impacts of the project, specifically regarding the surrounding areas around the building. I personally appreciate and applaud the planning, design, and specifically the presentation of this office building. And I really agree with the idea of moving it to the north and creating a more professional and less industrial ambiance for this area along that street front, North Street front. But an item of particular concern, not just for Marburg and this site, but we're also working with CalMat and the neighbors on the other side along Calle Cesar Chavez to address the screening. And one of the things that'd be really great, Brian, you and your team can look at is the garbage trucks, which are about 12 or 13 feet high, combined with the grade differential, tower like 8 to 10 feet over the sidewalk there. So the trailers, the dozens of Johnny Quicks, and all the other industrial uses there for all the neighbors have been a big pushback.
Mr. Holiday, that's a different project. That's, are you speaking specific to this project? This project,
yeah, the
this project
screening.
this project has no trucks or anything. This is all cars and so forth for the employees.
So
personal vehicles.
has that all been, what we're looking for is whatever's going to be parked on that site, that the visual impacts of whatever that parking area on the site are just thought through.
Understand.
And there's some really great examples of LA area green screening, and I'm sure Brian and all the team agree with this. We're just hoping that as Marburg moves forward, this is an awesome project. I personally think the design is great, and we're just looking at the industrial. We want to be less of the industrial dumping ground, and I'm sure Marburg wants to see this as well, for whatever is going to be parked on that site, and we should get it specified. If it's not garbage trucks, awesome.
Right.
Just like to sort of figure out what it is, and if it's not Johnny Quicks and trailers and other things, and they go somewhere else, wherever they go in this whole area and project, we want to sort of think through the aesthetics, because we have tourists walking from the hotels up around this block, and our little Craftsman District's really becoming a visual asset for the community, but people get lost down here thinking, hey, I'm in the wrong area.
Okay.
So
Thank
that's
you.
my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Holiday.
At this time, I don't have any other hands raised on Zoom, and we also did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair Six.
So that being the case, we'll close public comment and bring it back to questions to the board. Oop. Okay.
All right. I'll just start with your stormwater thoughts, and you were talking about doing a simple gutter around the roof overhang. Were you thinking of exposed gutters or hidden gutters, like downspouts? Sorry.
Thinking exposed downspouts that would go
Into the ground?
the perimeter
Oh,
landscape.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the roof structure is CLT.
Yeah.
There's really no way to do an internal
Sure.
hidden gutter, and so we thought if we just sort of incorporated that into the fascia.
Mm-hmm.
And besides, after doing this for 47 years, I'm becoming really gun shy of
Oh,
bringing
sure.
water into a
Into the
building.
Yeah. Understood. All right, well, are you guys proposing any fencing around your parking lot?
You know, we weren't going to propose fencing. We certainly thought we would have hedging green that would screen the cars at some level.
Okay.
And, you know, I think that's what the intent is, and do we want to gate it? Do we want to fence it for security? I mean, if it was, I would imagine it would be a low, not a high.
Yeah,
fence or
so
screen.
I think we've looked at the property south of this one and have approved a fence on that particular parcel. So if there was to be a fence, we'd want to see how it relates to that one. And
Is
if
that right,
it's-
John, or is this, that's the other adjacent where the trucks are parked, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, this fencing would really just be for security.
Sure. I was just
Yeah,
curious.
but yeah, absolutely, we'd want to make sure that those jive.
Those are my only questions.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wayland?
Thank you, Chair Six. First, a question for staff. I'm a bit confused after Member Anderson's comment. I seem to remember another proposal for this site completely with
Yeah.
a different building, and that's being wiped clean, and we have a new proposal in front of us.
I would assume, and I'm going to defer to the applicant team to answer that. I might not have been around during that time as well.
Yeah, you were.
You remember, Wheelan? Yes, we had, in 2021, we had an approved project for a light industrial building. It was around 3,100 square feet, and it was for, mainly for storage of equipment and vehicles on this property. So that approval is still valid, but we have, as Brian had mentioned, we're reconsidering a different
Glad we
use.
cleared that up. My other question for the designers is any of your design intent meant to reflect our particular sense of place here in Santa Barbara?
Well, that's a good question. Certainly in terms of the way the building functions and its orientation, yes. But as far as our Spanish colonial heritage, no. I mean, we are using plaster as our solid material within this condition, but no, we think this is a unique site and a unique area, and really want this building to be as functional as possible for that.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right,
Chair
thanks.
Six.
Mr. Black?
There were some comments made about screening of the parking area. So are you anticipating that you're going to have enough room between the sidewalk and the parking lot to affect
Yeah,
the city's guidelines when it comes to parking lots? Was it 8 feet on the landscape or less than 8 feet?
It is a wall of 42 inches. I think we have 8 feet in,
Sorry, Eleni.
I think we did put 8 feet in along the street, is that right, Jeff, or?
Got it to mention here.
Yeah.
So we've got 6 feet from the car overhang to the back of
So
sidewalk.
I think we would comply with that 8 feet, but that would be the intent, to do it with landscape and not with a wall.
Well, if you have 8 feet, you can use it.
Board Member Black, may you turn on your mic, please? Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so if you have 8 feet, then you can use landscaping, so.
Question, does the 8 feet include the overhang? Is that what you're having?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
We'll have to find out,
Yeah,
I
you
think.
would. Yeah.
Because the intent here is that the curb would be the wheel stop. So it is 2.5 feet back
Right.
from that line. So we would have 8 feet to the curb, but we'll have to verify that it does. I think that the intent would be to make that, make the 8 feet work.
Okay. Those are my questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Black. So let's just climb aboard that one. Do you have the similar setback issues on the opposite side of the?
Well, that's not along a street, that's along a private property, so we would, I think we have 5 feet there.
You could move, oh, you have to have 5 feet.
Well, no, I don't think we do. I think we can have 3 feet
so
in
anyway.
that condition.
All right. I don't quite understand. You have your main entry at the street, or you have the main entry down the spline of the?
We have the
parking?
main entry at the street, but it is not at the corner of the intersection. It is
okay, I get it.
off of
All right.
Quarantina, yeah.
So a few minor things about the site plan. On the up sheet right of the property, can you explain the void in landscaping along the upper bay of parking?
Right there, the trash, that area?
Left of that, excuse me, right of that.
That
Oh,
whole strip.
that's a path, that's basically our path of travel to the trash and then to the sidewalk. So that would be paved for pedestrian, access to the trash and the sidewalk.
What's adjacent to that?
Yeah, that's right here.
That's off your property?
That's
Well,
right, yeah, there's a driveway on, just off of our
Off
property.
your property, okay.
Yeah, so let me see if I can zoom in here. So you can see it a little bit better.
And you didn't feel you needed to screen that because it was adjacent to another industrial property, correct?
It's a good question. You know, we may want to screen it. Certainly, again, there's going to be a lot of activity between this, the site on the left there of this photo and our proposed site. So, you know, that's worth discussing. I will tell you, certainly a criteria was for us to get as many parking spaces as possible to accommodate their growing employees.
So, other question is, on the site plan, it seems like, for me anyway, the building is crowded to the main streets. What is this, setback of 5 feet? Is that correct? Yeah.
8.5 feet from the property line. It's probably, what, 12 feet or so from the curb.
Yeah, so we're 6 feet on Quarantina from the back sidewalk, and obviously it varies here, but
8.5 from the property line.
5 feet from the sidewalk.
Was there a study to, well, I guess not. Is there any possibility of manipulating handicapped spaces, the width, or reducing the width of that center cross aisle in order to move the building back, you know, and make the project less long to its long site?
Well, I think from a practical standpoint, probably the only thing we could do, because we want to keep that vehicular access aligned with the street, across the street.
I understand, yes.
I think it means we lose, you know, we'd have to lose a bay of parking, so we'd lose 4 spaces in order to do that. Obviously, there's no parking requirement here. Again, from, you know, Marburg's standpoint, they want to get as many spaces in this lot as they can.
All right.
And the reason for that is just you're thinking to get more setback at the building frontage, more landscaping?
Yeah. So I bookend this with comment that it's a gorgeous building with the wood timbers and the idea of the glass and high ceilings. Well, let's back up. The floor-to-floor is 12.6, and usually the argument is that there are HVAC and attic space issues. Is that the case here? But your renderings show
Well,
a delightful bare underside structure.
So
right.
we're 12 feet floor to floor, and the concept, just from a mechanical routing standpoint, if I go back to the floor plans, whoops, sorry, hit the wrong thing. So as Brian mentioned, we've located this bathroom core which stacks floor to floor.
So that's where your floor-to-floor pinch is. That's where your floor-to-floor pinch will be.
Yeah, essentially, and there will be, I mean, obviously, there's beams coming down into the space, and then there's going to be ductwork.
If I could finish, so we've
Excuse me.
located a couple of shafts through the building, which align with that mechanical space on the roof. So that's where the mechanical equipment would come down, and then get routed sort of around, right, this open office space, which is what you were seeing in those renderings. So yeah, so that is sort of the pinch in terms of ceiling height, with the notion of keeping these open office spaces clear of any mechanical ductwork and.
But it's these are fairly good size open spaces, so we just don't want to have, we don't want to, I mean, you need about a 12-foot ceiling, so I don't think we've gone, overboard in terms of ceiling height here by the time it all comes down.
Yeah, and then, I mean, then we've, the beams are likely 24 inches deep, right? So then we're at 10 feet, we've got to get ducts below them, and so,
Okay.
very quickly, we're at, 9 feet for some of these office spaces.
Understand fully, yes. So I introduced this comment with the concern that it's a gorgeous building in concept, and the materials and the wood structure and so forth. But I resonate with Mr. Whalen's question on how does this sympathize with the Santa Barbara sensitivities, and certainly we don't need to see a full-on Spanish building here, but the question is, a phrase it also is that certainly the immediate area has no desirable context to replicate unless you're doing a tin shed. But when one goes up and down the freeway, there is kind of there's tidbits of what Santa Barbara is all about. I wondered if you could answer, I guess my same question as Mr. Whalen is, how does this fit with the context and the sensitivities of Santa Barbara in the overall freeway context?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and for me, it's more important for this building to function well and be a statement about sustainability. So from the freeway, what you're going to see is a rooftop full of solar panels, and it will speak to that. It obviously is in a very mixed bag neighborhood, and even as you know, Chair 6, the Marburg main receiving building is certainly doesn't speak to Santa Barbara Spanish, and yet somehow it works in the way that it was.
The recycling
the
building.
the recycling building, yeah. Somehow, and it works, and you don't, we didn't try to make that Spanish, and it's not that I, used that as a reason why I didn't want to make this Spanish. I think it just really came down to creating an honest building with as much glass for natural light for folks inside as possible, and to make it beautiful. And so I think the landscaping is going to do some of that work, but,
Let me refine my question. The Santa Barbara sensitivities have mass-based architecture. Is there ability to reduce the glass and still have amount of glass you have and still have meet your sustainability criteria, and, for instance, wrapping opaque walls around the corner instead of expressing the ends of those corners? Would you be willing to go there? I don't know what the rest of the board feels about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've certainly tried to create those, those larger masses. I mean, that wall is a good example. At the corner, you're right. I mean, that is that corner condition is basically facing, has sort of a beautiful view towards beyond to the mountains. So we wanted to be able to capture that. So, I suppose we could certainly study it, but I really don't want to lose the natural light in the space. I'm not being obstinate.
No, I'm trying to ease my concern here. Is there any way to bring more Santa Barbara details to it, such as, this sounds, I'm sure you could refine this to where it would be less obnoxious than what I'm saying.
Well, I
but
could
an
do-
O-
I could
an
do
OG
copper. I mean,
an
copper,
OG to the,
for
to the fascia or something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I could certainly do, a copper edge, which would speak to our materiality. I think about the building that actually was a Kruger Benson Seymour building that we remodeled at the corner of Ken and Perdido and Chapala. And, that's a modern building that was placed in downtown, El Pueblo Viejo, and admittedly, it does have a tile mansard that we reduced in size. It was it had a very thick fascia that we reduced and put a copper half-round gutter around, which did soften it quite a bit. So, that's one way we could
Well,
work on
maybe
it.
all my questions are redundant if the rest of the board is comfortable here. So, I think those are my questions. So let's go to,
I thought for sure we were in comments.
back up, Brian. We're not there yet. All right, so who would like to start with comments? Yes, Ms. Anderson.
Okay, I think this is a great project. I think the location on the site plan is the perfect spot for the building. I think it's an efficient layout for the parking. I think if you want to try to make this nod to the Santa Barbara style, you could study the proportions of the glass and the mullions, and maybe reference some of the downtown office buildings and maybe just study that. But I'm excited about the CLT. I'm excited about, the efficiency of the design. I think it's an exciting project. So, those are my
Thank you, Ms.
comments.
Anderson. Mr. Wayland.
Thank you, Chair Six. First of all, I too would commend you on the urban design, the way the building sits on the northern portion of the site, relates to other buildings, the intersection. I think you've got that all perfectly right, as opposed to the previous plan, which I thought was rather clunky and awkward, whereas here you get it just right. Could you go to your photograph from 101, please? Yes. First of all, I want to commend your staff for their daring do to get this image.
Well, I think was it a Google Earth or?
Is Matthew on his motorcycle riding
That's
by?
pretty courageous. But
Google Earth.
But it does speak to something that I believe other members have on their mind too. When I'm zooming through Santa Barbara on 101, whether or not I stop and enjoy the delights of the city, you do see the roofscape, the tile. Even on Calle Cesar Chavez, one block over, when you look at the southbound 101, you're going to see the roofscape there. And I think that's important to lending that sense of where you are that is so distinctive about Santa Barbara. So that's something I'd like you to seriously consider in your design development. It's a very elegant building. I like the proportions, the materiality of it. But Mr. Cornell, as you just mentioned, there are a number of buildings from the 60s and 70s that are of that era, and now they're part of our Santa Barbara fabric. But they too, even in their modernist or even brutalist expressions, they tried to express some sense of Santa Barbara, as you mentioned, with a tile lip even at the fascia edge. So there again, I would encourage you to examine that portion, because while the PV array is commendable, I don't think it really reflects Santa Barbara. In another 20 years, it's going to look, every building is going to have PV panels on it. So hopefully, unless there's some new technology, fusion comes along and saves us all. So perhaps some sort of screening that would disguise the PV and bring out this color, not necessarily tile, but this terracotta color, the copper color, something that adds to the roofscape of Santa Barbara. Let's see. I think that's all I have. Thank you, Chair Six.
Thank you, Mr. Wayland. Mr. Black?
Well, a couple things. One is, I think it's a very handsome building, as has been said, but, and I think it works for this neighborhood. There's enough precedent in this town. If you wander around, there's a lot of contemporary buildings that are not Spanish that seem to work. And I think this works better than they do. So, I mean, given the industrial context of this neighborhood, I think this building works as is in my book. But also, you're going to have a lot of opportunity to plant a lot of trees in that parking lot, and it is on the south side. So this view that you have from the freeway, I think, is going to be mitigated considerably once those trees in that parking lot mature, in addition to the street trees on your east and north side. So I'm not as concerned about screening the roof as others might be, but I think it's a nice project, and I think I wouldn't press for many changes to it.
Thank you, Mr. Black. I also think it's a very nice project, very beautifully designed and proportioned building. But I'm resonant with the undercurrent of the other two members here about, having this somehow ease into Santa Barbara. And I think through my extensive questioning and some of suggestions from Mr. Whelan, there are probably some very unique solutions to dial it minor. I like the idea of Ms. Anderson's idea of perhaps the window mullions, or a reference to that, or something like that. We talked about the fascia. I just think it's worth an effort to have some ambiance of a Santa Barbara feeling. I don't think tile is, as I said, Spanish is not the word, but some very minor finesses. And I don't think, we're capable here of, you and your talented firm are capable of finding those finesses, and anything we drum up here in 5 minutes are not worth, they're worth 5 minutes.
Okay.
So I think that's said. I think that as we indicated, I think you need to study the the fencing, the security, and the per ordinance, the screening of cars, et cetera. I think that was the only technical thing other than the general design that we had. So I'd make a, oh, no motion, okay. So, thank you very much, it's a beautiful building, and I hope you take our comments sincerely and,
Always.
and
I appreciate
take it
it.
on. Thank you, beautiful building.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Is this it? Are you done?
We got one more.
Really?
No, unless you guys have another project.
We're early because I'm in charge.
That's right. Good job. We won't tell Kevin you said that. Thanks, guys.
So do we need to recess?
No.
No, okay.
Bobby Walker.
Yeah, I saw him. You guys running around, yeah.
Okay.
I think we lost.
I think so. For being a board, 3 out of 4, we all seem to hover around the same comment.
I'm sure Sheila Lodge is rolling around.
Yes. We want Sheila's praise. But I do think that the roofscape is important.
Yeah.
Their freeway experience.
Let's keep our presentations under time.
Cool. So I just converted that PowerPoint to PDF.
Oh, well, I really needed it as PowerPoint because it's got animations in it.
I think the animations still work.
They're,
It's just, it becomes, we've seen other, it's just been a problem. Sometimes like the computer will do some weird stuff, like swapping between these things. So I hope it's not too much of an issue.
We don't need Mr. Gordon's presentation. We know what it's about.
but you don't.
Okay, so but if it's, if you would like.
I really prefer to do it as PowerPoint. It's not like a super intensive file.
Okay. I have to download that, so.
Maybe we do get a break.
I'm teasing you. I'm teasing you, Jared.
I know. You're always teasing me. But you did say I was charming at the last hearing. I needed that.
You remember?
Somebody else repeated that too.
Here, why don't you sit here, Bobby,
Yeah.
since you're mainly doing the presentation.
We gotta stop meeting like this.
Did we get these mixed up? We know who's who.
You guys are mostly on schedule today, right?
We're mostly
Right on
ahead of
schedule.
schedule.
Ahead, that's great. Oh yeah, we're your last, huh? Nice.
Next time, I can't do transitions. It's been kind of directive from my supervisor. So we'll give this one a shot, but it's not something that, it's like been a problem with other presentations, so. Hopefully it goes.
I didn't use any fancy transitions.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, I think it's.
Star wipe. Yeah. No.
We'll do that, but if There's not any fancy transitions. I think the regular PDF should.
Well, it's just, it's not gonna make sense if you just converted each slide into it, because sometimes 3 slides make 1 slide in so it wouldn't make any sense at all.
Just the FYI in the future, just because.
I'll just do static slides in the future. Great.
The swapping between this and the other stuff is also an issue as well. So.
All right, good.
So technically, are we ready?
I think so.
We gotta open up the item and stuff.
Okay, so we will, now after a brief technical issue, we will continue with item 3, 428 Anacapa Street. This is a proposed project, involves demolition of 2 single-family residences and a detached garage, and construction of a new mixed-use structure comprising of 6 short-term rental units on the ground and 9 long-term rental apartments on the 2nd through 4th floors. Proposed density is 61.6 units per acre, and average size of the residential units is 825 square feet. 6 covered parking spaces will be provided to serve the non-residential use. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. Project will require compliance with the project compatible guidelines. So if you introduce yourselves and show us your project.
Jarrett Gorin from Vanguard Planning.
Bobby Walker Design.
Nico Sarkar Franson, Common Ground Landscape Architecture.
Great. So, SB 330, I'm not going to give the spiel on it. You've heard it before many times, but it's an SB 330 project. So I'm going to walk you through neighborhood context, and then Bobby's going to go through the design stuff, and Nakos will go through our landscape concept. So this is a straight down aerial view of our project site. That's the site right there. That's Haley Street and Anacapa Street. So this is looking east towards the project site. So you can see kind of what's around us here. 2-story buildings. That's almost a 3-story height over there. And then this is Robin Donaldson's project, Anacapa Studios. So here's looking to the north. Kind of see a different angle on those buildings around us. And then these lower scale houses, remnant residential over there. And then looking over to the west, over this newer project next door, and you can get a better idea of the scale between these two looking at that here. So this is actually 4 stories, and this is somewhere around 3 stories, although it's a 2-story building. And then this is looking back towards the south. And then this over here, that's the 410 State Street project. It's under construction right now. They actually have one of those cantilever cranes up now. I don't think I've ever seen one of those in Santa Barbara before. So anyway, it's a pretty large scale project, and this is what it will look like from the Gutierrez elevation. And then that's the elevation that you would see from Anacapa Street, more or less across the street from us. And then here we are looking down the Haley corridor. So there's our project site. Right here is the 425 Santa Barbara Street project, which we just brought through your board and up to appeal, and we won that appeal. So that's going forward. There was that project, 19 units, 44 feet high. Then going down the street at 219 East Haley, we've got the DMHA project, and that was 46 feet, 34 units. That goes down a really long, narrow lot. This sort of de-emphasizes the size of that project, but it's a nice street elevation and kind of similar in scale to what you'll see from ours. And then down here, these are other AUD projects that are either approved or in the works. I think that's 425 Garden Street. I think that's approved. And then this was 501 Garden, which has been here for concept and got a pretty favorable review. And then that's Becker's project down there at Lighthouse Coffee. And I worked on that a long time ago, but I don't know how that's going now, but it's 4 stories, pretty large AUD project. So walking around our street here, this is us. This is the building that's at the corner of Haley and Anacapa. And then that's our project site. going a little bit further down the street, looks like there was a couple of these like pair of bungalow projects going along the street here. That's 422, and I don't know why I missed that one as an individual slide, but anyway, that's the guy who wrote in a letter. I think that's his place. Then here we've got some other commercial. I think it's an auto repair business, and the Anacapa Studios building. You can get an idea of how they treated their frontage here, and they're right up on a 0 setback. Then we've got 410 Anacapa Street, also commercial. We got this little house, and then this thing at the very corner of Anacapa and Gutierrez, and that's actually a short-term rental property with 3 short-term units. And then just real quick down the other side of the street, so that's on the corner of Haley. You'll see the other side of the street is almost entirely non-residential. So we got this parking lot roughly across from us, an auto repair business, container storage. This is, I think, the one residential use we've got on that other side of Anacapa Street. And then Reed's Appliances, and then this is, again, that's right here is where that project's going to be at 410 State Street. So that's my presentation on context. Now we'll switch and hopefully not have any technical problems.
Thank you.
All right.
Should be open, just go down to the bottom tab and select that PDF there. It's in Adobe.
Oh, cool. Plans. There it is. All right.
Perfect. Thank you, Jared. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us back. I'll walk you through the design of 428. He went over a little bit in high level, but we have 2 existing houses and a garage on the site right now. And as we go through the site plan, you'll see the proposing demoing everything on the site, starting from dirt up with the new apartment building. So the ground floor is covered parking at grade, 6 parking spaces for the project, and then we have short-term rentals. From the sidewalk, you can walk along here, and we'll see this a little bit better too when we get to the landscape plans. But we'll walk along the side here to get into the unit for the residents, and then it's also the same walkway that's used for the short-term rentals. So for the design of the project, I'm sure just from picking up some cues from what Jarrett just went through, there's a lot of this more contemporary Spanish, modern Spanish, I guess what you want to call it in that area. So we're going with all couple tones of plaster, white with a contrasting plaster, steel roof, steel, or I guess it would be aluminum probably, in detailing these canopies with actual natural wood trellis members in it. We're going with steel so we can have planting on each of the deck areas, so that they'll actually, every deck in the project has planting, and then we're doing open rails, and we thought that really helped reduce the mass to bring down the scale of the project. At the ground level, each of these short-term rentals has its own kind of private entryway and small canopy to signify, where it's at, and then you enter through gates here, and so we're utilizing a setback there in order to create an entry into the space, so it's not right up on the street, but then we're also creating a small wall there and planters so that it's private and people aren't walking up to your door or using that space to hang out in, I guess. From looking north here, we can see into kind of the drive aisle for the parking garage. We added a little bit of color and pop to the project. So we have the tallest part of this is a elevator tower. So we decided to use that and emphasize it as a feature, as part of the project, instead of it just being a sore thumb. So we're bringing some detailing here, which we've talked about, both like a mosaic on the underside of that, or some sort of stained glass that's illuminated. We're bringing that down here at the ground floor as well, and then at the short-term rental area, incorporating that as well. So it's kind of a little feature in this project. And conceptually here, we're showing a mosaic wall with a little water feature right there. So hoping that would help kind of with both noise and since it's kind of a lobbyless experience, creating a little bit of an entry for guests. Here's a good image too of the two tones of plaster. So we have our primary white plaster and then our recessed tones here. And then this, we've talked about doing an actual T&G there and staining it. And then later on, I have a couple of vignettes. You can see this feature here is referenced as more like a plane, and then there's a recessed massing next to that. The shot looking south gives another good view of kind of how each of the units has deck space. So these top floor units have decks back here, and as you can see, Jared, I think, mentioned this, but it's a two-story building, practically 3 stories on this side, though. So we have some site sections we show we're matching the height for the most part over here. So you're not looking at it from our unit, and also from the other side, you're not seeing a large mass from the parking lot. And so we continue to step up the massing. And that was an important part of this project for us, is that from all the sides, the massing feels like it's stepping back significantly. And there's a rooftop here for the penthouse units. And then the rooftop on the front is for all the guests, everybody staying in the apartments. Here's just more, the floor plans just kind of emphasize how a lot of our floor plan at the ground floor is dictated by parking and just the minimum requirements. We needed to get those 6 parking spaces in there. And then another nice graphic here is this 4th floor plan. You can see how significantly, we do have that elevator tower, but how significantly the actual massing of the apartments go back on the 4th floor. Okay, and then I apologize. There's a big mix-up here where this northwest and the northeast elevation are the same, which they obviously aren't. But so showing 3 elevations here. I think a couple things that I guess I haven't mentioned here is that on the ground floor and the parking, we're trying to bring as much light down there as we can. So we'll go into this with the landscape a little bit, but our infiltration tests don't allow us to do some of the more standard procedures on the ground floor for Tier 3. So we're going to end up using above-grade planters for a lot of the water discharge. And then we're trying to incorporate that as a way that brings more greenery to the project. That's just a parking lot back there. And then on our side, it's we have parking under a podium there. So it's to bring a lot of light and greenery into there. And there's space on both sides of our building so that the light can actually get down into the space. And you can see from these elevations too that the topmost part of this project is that elevator tower, and it continues to step back significantly at each level. Here at the front, it's only 30 feet tall. There's a couple of vignettes from the project. So I would say it's a cleaner, this kind of contemporary Spanish style is a cleaner, simpler design. So we're looking a lot at just functional, beautiful materials. So that's what we're going for here. When you enter, nice steel gate, tile work, well-designed steel canopy with real wood trellis members in that. Rooftop vignette here showing how we are trying to create structured areas and covered areas, but we're doing the best job we can to keep that massing reduced. So I think these trellises do a good job of achieving that. And this is showing some of that more modern detailing here where we have the plane of this wall extend past the windows, and then you get a nice recess there where the windows go wall to wall. It really helps this form feel like it's its own unique identity separate from this plane. Okay, and I will make sure I give you a couple minutes here. These are the site sections. Again, that's that back area we were showing. Same height and more of the material callouts that we've been discussing. I don't think there's anything new here. Wood accent, standing seam roof.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. For the landscaping, we're working with Civil to infiltrate stormwater. We'll have to use above-grade planters for stormwater infiltration. On all floors, we're using as much lightweight, hard plastic, likely, pots to soften up the building while keeping out of ADA and views of the out from the building. Third, fourth, and fifth level, again, trying to place as much planters around while still keeping access to all areas. Fourth level, big rooftop area. We'll get into the actual planting right now. We're trying to keep at as low water use plants as possible. There's actually an arbor here that goes down to the parking areas that lets light in, like Mr. Bobby was talking about. And wherever there are those nice aluminum or steel, depending on the level, we're trying to train vines and other plants up to those areas that will soften the building. The third, fourth, and fifth levels you see here. The fourth level is really the showcase for the rooftop area, which has a nice wood-featured arbor and lots of opportunities for plants on that level, as well as the back level. The fifth floor, we're trying to keep all plants low, just for any wind purposes and view purposes. We don't want like a tall tree or anything to fall over at any point. And that's the general planting is low water use.
All right, thank you. That concludes your presentation. All right, thanks. So with that, we'll open public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair Six. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips. If you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. Seeing no one move to speak, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak online at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, but we did receive one letter from Mark Pratt, and with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair Six.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll close public comment and bring it to the board for questions. Who would like to start? Mr. Noon? Start down at your area.
I don't have any questions yet.
Nor do I.
All right. Mr. Whalen?
The public comment letter talked about below-grade parking. Could you clarify that there is not?
There's no below-grade parking.
Fine. Good. So on your, well, I don't think that really matters. Could you talk about the interface with the 422 to the building to the east? It shows up on one of your sections. That was another one of the comment concerns.
Yeah, I think you're talking about 422 is this house right here.
Yes.
So we have a three-story mass with the shed roof adjacent to that, and then we have this, because of that neighboring condition, we trying to focus the windows not towards that property, I guess.
Go back to the 3D one, because that's the wrong.
Oh, yeah, you're right, sorry.
3D one shows it really well.
Yeah, so we're trying to provide light into all this space here without looking at the neighboring property, and then we're using that as an architectural feature. And then along the ground floor here, we think it's important to try to bring light in there so it doesn't feel like this long driveway corridor area, but we're keeping the plaster opaque and we're planning on growing up the metal lattice, or we haven't done the detailing yet there, but yeah, vines on that, along that lattice there. So the windows that we're putting in here, we're doing, the intent is basically egress windows in there, and then we can, the the living room windows here, we're using to balance the elevation. So this is kind of like a living area here, I think, that we're balancing these windows on the side.
Thank you. Well, one last question. The long, dark brown wall there, that's not on the lot line, is it?
It's almost on the lot line, yeah.
Almost.
It's
Like
going to be set
that
back.
much?
More like 6 inches or 8 inches. But something we'll work with structural to determine.
Less than a foot.
Yeah.
And it's 8, 10 feet tall.
I can answer that question for you, what we're reflecting right now. Yeah, we're showing the ground floor plate at 10 feet, so probably more around 10 to 11.
It's sort of freestanding, right? But it's spanned over the driveway with beams?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
All right, Ms. Anderson?
Sure, could you expound on what kind of architectural style you would consider this proposal?
Yeah, I would consider it contemporary Spanish style.
Okay. Do you have some precedent imagery as to the mixed, precedent imagery for that in Santa Barbara, especially with the different roof forms that you have going on here?
I'd say a lot of our precedent, not in this package. I'd say we drew a lot of inspiration style from the area based on what Jarrett showed with some of his existing structures on our block and down that Haley corridor.
Okay, okay. All right.
I would expound further. When we were here for the 335 South Milpas project last week or a couple weeks ago, Commissioner Sheila Lodge, as a private citizen, came in with a lot of examples of some modern Spanish things around Santa Barbara, and a lot of those would be the same things that we kind of looked at here. There may not be something exactly like this. We've got more materials in this than some of those things, and we also, when we're going through all of these AUD projects that have been done recently, they've all got flat roofs everywhere. And we wanted to try something different here and have some sections that had sloped roofs on it. And I don't know if I'd be able to find an example around that actually has that, because everything has flat roofs, because everybody goes all the way up to the height limit.
Okay. Okay. Was there any consideration for a separate entry for your short-term versus long-term residents?
Yeah, we've talked about that. It's just very tight on space with the parking and trying to keep, I'd say one of the big constraints was we're trying to keep the bulk of the massing towards the center of the project. So to do that, we were moving that circulation to the center of the project, which you have to get to from the street, I guess. So instead of having the circulation more front forward and have the massing feel taller, we pushed it back, and that was kind of one of the constraints, is that it took a lot of space to get back there, so.
Okay.
One other thing on that is we do have 3 of those units that do take access directly across the frontage. So we separated half them out, and one of the reasons we a lot of the times in these projects, you've got sort of a blank wall down at the street, especially over here when it's sort of a more transitional neighborhood. And you know, retail doesn't necessarily work at this location, but this use allows us to have, to address the street directly with front doors, which I haven't seen that on one of these projects, but we had the opportunity here.
Okay. And then in your rendering, I wasn't quite sure what was happening with the front wall, the little 30-inch or 3-foot wall. Is that tile? The material, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's basically maybe a CMU or concrete wall that's then covered with tile.
Okay, okay.
And then the planters here in between are represented as Core-10 steel planters.
And the existing trees on site will be removed.
Yes.
And, okay, those are all my questions for now.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. My question's, your fourth floor roof decks, are they a requirement for open area for the residentials?
We are using them, but we're not putting them where they are as a direct response to open roof area. We're putting them there to maximize the views from the property.
So they're not part of the required open space, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. And then you mentioned that there was two stucco base colors. There's actually three, right? The dark, and then the medium.
Yeah, we're still discussing that. We've talked about simplifying it, where we actually only have two colors. Right now, we are showing three plaster
Okay.
colors. But we definitely want that light and dark tone.
And then I noticed on the project to the rear, there are some indents in that elevation with what looks like some little mini shed roof tile. Are those balconies out there in the central? Are you going to block one of those? And what are they about? Are they essential to the livelihood of those?
I can answer that. So we haven't done a detailed study of where our building lines up on those. They are little balconies. That's an office building, so they aren't essential to anything over there. And I'm not sure how they got away with it meeting fire code over there.
Yes,
But
uh-huh.
yeah, it's a zero setback building, and they provided those little balconies, and they're sort of like,
Well, the glass would be perpendicular to the.
yeah,
So
they're like little, like 4 foot by 4 foot balconies, and
You don't have, so.
I have
the-
photos of it.
The answer is you're blocking one of them?
We probably are gonna block one.
Okay, thanks. All right, I think those are my questions, so we'll bring it back.
I had a follow-up.
Oh, did I?
You covered me first, but I had
Okay.
a follow-up question. Thank you.
All right.
Back to a different rendering. I just wanted the large 10-foot wall, I think it was already discussed. Yes, the purpose of that is just, what?
To hold up the structure, and then, so we'll actually have structure here. This building here is over the drive aisle, so we'll have to cantilever out to this. And so the reason for that is we're so constrained on our width on this site with the drive aisle. Those extra couple feet really matter to be able to make the short-term rentals work at
Okay.
a livable width.
Okay. And then, not at this stage, but typically we would see, sort of a study of how you address privacy to adjacent properties. You mentioned that a little bit. You're saying you're considering that so far with pulling those windows around that architectural feature? Okay. Okay. That's it for now.
All right, do you want to slip right into comments?
Sure. So I guess I didn't understand the wall, the big dark wall. I mean, if there's a way that you could, I'm assuming right on the other side of it, it's just open. It's a drive, right?
Yes.
So potentially there could be some openings in that wall, just so it's, soften it a bit. The entries along the street were mentioned. I think the setback and just the little area that you have in front of the building is successful. The entries right there seem to be a little less successful. I don't know, don't have an answer for that. You can, it's just my comment if you care to look at it. Just in general, I think the way you've tried to, it's a big building, but the way you've tried to chip it away and step it back as you move in, I think is successful. Just looking at it as a whole, I find it a bit confusing. So I don't have an answer. Maybe maybe if you, I guess I'd like to see what the rest of the board says, but, you know, maybe if it's simplified in a way. The only word that comes to mind is a little confusing at this point.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Mr. Black?
Yeah, I think confusing is probably a good word. Just a couple other things that sort of bother me. One is that cap on the elevator tower. I mean, I understand what you're trying to do here, but it just architecturally, it just doesn't work for me. And so I'm not sure that it really works. I'm a little troubled by these rectangular windows. I think they're the only ones in the whole building, if I'm not mistaken, but they just seemed a little incongruous to me, maybe too large. The other sort of vertical windows to the left of them, they seemed a little oversized myself, but and then somehow I haven't gotten my head around the massing to the north with the gabled roof. It just seems, that roof line seems a little out of place somehow. I mean, I realize you're trying to create some variety perhaps, and maybe a little bit of an ode to more of the Spanish, but I don't know, maybe with this balcony there, it seems to work okay, I guess, but it seems a little incongruous given the rest of the massings. And that's all.
All right, thank you, Mr. Black. Mr. Wayland?
First of all, back to one other public comment that I wanted to dispel. I believe that the 422 talked about shading, and I don't believe this project is going to shade that parcel at all. So just to address that one comment. But I did like Mr. Nunn's word of jumble. When I think back to Sheila Lodge's example and the Robin Donaldson project just down the street, these are very careful distillations. And here it seems that you've tried, well, we're going to try a gable roof, we're going to try a flat roof. I would encourage you to distill these down to some very pure shapes, which is not only the Spanish colonial style or even contemporary Spanish style, which has a strong relationship to Vienna secessionist stuff, but I'm getting a little too far afield. I would encourage you to not only simplify the forms, but the massing, but the materials, the colors. Seems to me you could do away with the railing on the fourth floor and just have it the pure wall come up. As Mr. Black said, the elevator thingy is really just the sore thumb. And there it's throbbing in red for us all to see. Now, on Mr. Donaldson's project down the street, he has buried that way on the back of the site, and you never have any sense. It's a 4-story. Here, you're going up to 5-story and moving it out to the street. So the more that you moving it farther out than Donaldson's, by that I mean. So as much as you can reduce the massing on the street, which this view shows admirably, simplify the windows to maybe one standard. I think that is, Mr. Black, I believe, mentioned the awkwardness of a horizontal window and vertical window. That works against the simplicity that I think we would all like to see. It'd be nice if you could lose that 5th floor altogether, but I don't think we can tell you to do that. I think you're going to miss those balconies on that building to the east. When I took a careful look at it, but yeah, that's for you guys to solve. Yeah, it has no particular character. Again, I'm coming back to this idea of having a distinct character in mind. And if you were if you were lucky enough to get Sheila Lodge's sample of those buildings around, I think that's going to illustrate and perhaps guide you better than any of my words can do. So thank you, Vice Chair Six.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Anderson.
I won't belabor it too much, but in my opinion, the height and the mass are successful. The architectural style is not cohesive and it is confusing. And I do agree that the elevator tower roof is not integrated with the style and does seem like it's just slapped on top. I think you should study the window proportions, very similar to what everyone else has already said. So I think coming back, we'd like to see a site plan illustrating the privacy issues outlined today and how you address those. I think studying the large wall on the south side of the driveway, just studying where it starts and stops and how that also relates to your neighbor and structurally how that works with your architecture. I think we would want to see an example of that front wall. I don't think your rendering is helping you in that aspect. I think the mixed roof, I don't think they're successful, the mixed roof styles that you're looking at. So if there's a way to maybe you treat them as two separate buildings, and that's how you really illustrate the two architectural styles. But right now, it's just kind of going for it, and it's not working. So either we look at them as two separate buildings, and it's two different styles, or we're looking at one cohesive style for the entire thing, and you'll have consistent detailing and consistent materials and really refined palette. Okay, that's my question, or comments.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. My own thoughts on this, it starts with the throbbing fifth floor thumb. And I think, and I clarified with you that none of the fourth floor deck is a requirement. And I think this project is unfortunately very over-aggressive with its roof deck and so forth. And I would think that, still respecting the housing mandates that we have, that nothing says in those mandates that we have to have these overly aggressive and luxurious roof decks. So I would completely eliminate the fourth floor roof deck and the need to get up there with a elevator tower. I think that doing that, your gable end, your gable roof could continue over the opposite one that we're not seeing in this elevation, could be a dominant form that would make more sense. I think that, again, continue with the aggressive balconies. I think the balcony right up, as we see in this elevation here, the balcony should be pulled back so it's not so aggressive to the street. I think, and once, I don't think anybody has a comment on the severity of that. I don't know whether it's the south elevation, I guess you would say, the severity of that. And I think as I look at the fourth floor plan, I think that there's two units up there side by side. I'm wondering if that unit could be developed more over the front massing. How am I going to say this? You have a L-shaped lot, and the massing at the. Let's go to a floor plan, please. Fourth floor plan. There you go. See all of that aggressive roof deck over there, right hand, left hand of the elevator. I wonder if that second unit on the fourth floor could be moved into that area over there somehow and take a significant massing off of that poor neighbor to the south. Yes, I think worth studying. I agree with my fellow board members that there's too much fitting into this. It has to be reduced and it's simplified. I find that it's, 3 stucco colors plus the wood siding, it's, it should be simplified tremendously. I question, well, there's other minor things that, well, let's go into them. Can we bring up the rendering for to the entry garage? Yeah, there. I can't quite see it here, but I think your balcony above that entry is only halfway over the entry to the garage. Perhaps there's a better way to handle that so your post doesn't come mid-beam. And I question the size of the secondary trellis members and how they turn the corners and so forth. It just seems very overdone and adding to that complication and that jumble that we're talking about. So those are my comments. So folks, where do we want to go with this?
Comments only.
Oh,
No motion.
comments only. Bingo. Easy day.
Got our comments.
Okay, you did. Well, I hope those, you'll take those sincerely and helpful.
Yeah,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, with that being our last project of the day, we will adjourn. That's the word, thank you. Adjourn the meeting.